Hey everyone, Mr. Macintosh here, and I'm so excited to talk to you today about the latest OpenCore Legacy Patcher update 0.6.1. This is the update that you've been waiting for. You can now install macOS Ventura on non-metal Macs from 2008 to 2011. I'm also going to go over all the new features, improvements, and bug fixes in this update. I'm also going to ask the question that just because Ventura is out, should you update to it on your unsupported Mac? I'm also going to go over some very important notes before attempting to install macOS Ventura. Then I'm going to answer the question, is it safe to install the latest round of updates with the latest version of OpenCore? Then I'm going to go over 2 full demos on how to update the app on macOS Ventura with the KDK, and I'm going to show you how to update the app, OpenCore, and post volume patches on a Monterey system. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about Rapid Security Response Update, and I'm going to have 4 demo Macs to go over today: a 2010 Mac Pro with Ventura, 2011 MacBook Pro, 2013, and 2016. I gotta tell you, we got lots to cover. We better jump in and get started. So first we'll go over the new features, and of course, like I said at the top of the video, the biggest news here is non-metal graphics acceleration for macOS Ventura from 2008 to 2011 Macs. This is what everybody's been waiting for, and it's finally here for you to be able to test out. Now there's some caveats there that we need to talk about later here, but the support is there, and I've been testing it out for the last couple days, and it's been working very well. Another important piece is legacy wireless networking that was not working before. Now there's also some USB 1.1 controller stuff that we're going to talk about later. That's very important when it comes to trackpad and keyboard. It's not just using USB items. USB 1.1 also has to do with your keyboard on laptops and your trackpad, so we got to talk about that. Then there's AMD Vega Graphics on pre-Haswell Macs, which is great. And then there's some information about rapid security response updates for macOS Ventura 13.2 and newer. You can see from this really nice infographic here of all the compatible Mac hardware that you can install macOS Ventura with 0.6.1 from all the way 2008 to 2016. Let's read this important note here. As to be expected, many of these features are still in active development. This is a community-driven project, and as such, we ask users to keep expectations in check and use Monterey if you encounter any issues that may affect you, and you can see the individual sections below for more information. Now let's talk about the non-metal graphics card support here. You can see all AMD, NVIDIA, and Intel are supported for the non-metal graphics GPUs, and there's some important notes to look at here. If you're looking for Stage Manager support, that is not supported yet, and also AMFI needs to be disabled, and Bluetooth pairing is currently semi-functional, and there's a couple workarounds you can look at this little section here. I mentioned above I wanted to talk about this USB 1.1 situation for macOS Ventura, and I'll go over this here. For systems that with internal low-speed USB controllers, this adds support for low-speed USB devices, including keyboards, mice, trackpad, and Bluetooth controllers. Note, this implementation is not entirely complete, namely that the macOS installer and post macOS updates will not function with USB 1.1. See the associated issue for more information. Now let's take a look at this chart. So let's say you have an iMac, Mac Pro, and Mac Mini, and you want to install macOS Ventura on it. Well, to be able to use the keyboard and mouse in macOS recovery in the operating system that's not patched, you need to be able to use a USB 2.0 hub, and then your keyboard will work in the recovery environment and in the operating system until you're patched. Once you're patched and you install the post volume patches, you don't need to use this anymore, but you got to have this standing by. And what's interesting is if you have an older 2008 Apple keyboard that has 2 USB ports on the side, that actually does work. I've tested that. That's a really nice thing. You don't even need this hub. Now, if you're on a laptop, the same thing. It actually has to do with the trackpad and the keyboard on the machine itself. So, for example, if you're trying to install macOS Ventura on this MacBook, you're still going to need a USB hub for the keyboard and mouse for installing Ventura, and then getting the post volume patches installed once you get into the operating system. Once that's done and you're patched, you can disconnect these and your keyboard and trackpad will work. So again, this is just a workaround right now until this can be solved. And it might not be able to be solved, but at least we got a workaround. And you can see here the model list of machines that you have to use the hub and the keyboard to be able to get the installer and macOS environment without the patches done here. Another big win here is support for AMD Vega Graphics and pre-Haswell Macs in macOS Ventura. So if you have a Mac Pro or iMac and you upgraded to these graphics cards, they work, and here's the full list, and that was really great improvement. And this is actually came into a donation to the developers from one of the users of OpenCore Legacy Patcher. And again, this can't come together without the generosity of users donating hardware to be able to test with, so that's absolutely fantastic. The next thing I wanted to go over was rapid security response updates. This is important for macOS Ventura 13.2 or newer. These rapid security response updates are just like on iPhone and iPad, and the idea is between the major OS releases, like for example 13.2 and 13.3, if there's a big vulnerability that comes out, instead of waiting like a month and a half until the major update comes out, Apple can now issue a rapid response security update to be able to be installed to keep your Mac fully secure. A lot of work went into getting this supported for these models from 2014 all the way to 2016 Macs. If you have pre-Haswell, those rapid security response updates are not working right now, so that's currently a work involved. So if you try to install that, it will just fail and not install at all. I would recommend holding off on installing these for when the first one comes out. These were heavily tested in beta for 13.2, and the problem is that they're automatically installed, and I can show you that really quick. This is a 2016 MacBook Pro 15-inch, and I want to show you where those rapid security response updates are. You can go back to General and then go into Software Update and then click on the little I here, and you can see Install Security Responses. That's the rapid security response and System Files. When one of these comes out, it'll automatically install and ask you to reboot. And if there's a problem, you might be stuck. So maybe I might recommend turning this off just for now until the very first one, because again, they just came out in beta. We haven't had a real production one yet. And then type in your password here, and that's off for now. That's just a precaution till the first one comes out and we install it and make sure everything's running okay. Now when we talked about some of the major features of 0.6.1, let's talk about some of the fixes. First of all, you might be wondering, wait a minute, what happened with 0.6.0? That was the first major release that brought the macOS Ventura support for non-metal Macs. Once it came out, there was an issue that was found with a certain AMD machines with the KDK, or the kernel development kit, that caused some problems that first day. The developers got together really quickly here and were able to resolve that and put out 0.6.1 that fixed that issue, which was really great to be able to see. So now that we know what happened here with the 0.6.0, all these fixes here are included in 0.6.1. One of the implemented fixes here is implement Wi-Fi only patches when no internet connection is available but required to get the KDK. So what that means is that on AMD systems, they need the kernel development kit to be able to include the AMD graphics drivers for those units. Now what happens is that the version of KDK usually has to match the version of operating system. So the KDK for 13.2 would match macOS 13.2. The problem is though, is that when you install a macOS update, it blows these KDKs away. So the patcher has to go out there and download them again. But you need an internet connection, and you need the patches to be able to get Wi-Fi to be able to get them. So it's a two-step process. It get the patches for the Wi-Fi, then you're able to download the KDK. So that's a nice new system to be able to do that for those models. There was also an issue on certain MacBook Airs that when you went to go install macOS Ventura, the recovery environment didn't even see the factory SSD. So there's a patch here that was able to show the detection of that SSD, but it also says that it will not put the patch in there if the Mac does not have one of the affected drives. So if you updated to a different version of the SSD, you're not going to get that patch. So that's a nice fix. Then there's another prompt here for the auto patcher when OpenCore is booted and is out of date. When we say, well, what is the version of OpenCore installed on your hard drive? And I would show you the NVRAM to get the version. The new patcher 6.1 will now check when it boots. The patcher has realized that you are running a version of OpenCore on your hard drive that is older than the current version. You need to install that to your drive, and that's great because now you don't have to go in there and keep checking anymore. Wonderful fix here. Then there's also some notes around the USB 1.1 issue and talks about the root patching. There's one thing that if you're using a Mac Pro, do not use the 3.0 controller alongside these patches because there could be a problem with that and cause a bunch of issues with the system. Read this information here to see more about that issue. Now, I also mentioned earlier that Bluetooth pairing is working on some systems and semi-working in others. On the systems that I was testing, it was working just fine, but if you're having any issues, there's a link hear that there's a workaround to be able to do that if you're having that issue. The non-metal team here came in handy, working on some non-metal blur and screen animation issues that happen, and that's fixed in this release and improved. Really nice. And then there's also a new option in setting miscellaneous settings for APFS trim. What that means is that trim is garbage collection for SSD drives. Apple built in Trim Force command for macOS to be able to do that, especially for SSDs that were not Apple branded. So that's a nice fix. Now, the next question I wanted to go over is, should you install macOS Ventura on your unsupported Mac? Again, it all depends on what Mac you have. Do you have a metal supported Mac or do you have a non-metal supported Mac? If you have a metal supported Mac, there's many people that have installed Ventura right now and it's running very well for them. Now on non-metal, the support is there, and in my experience it's been working very well. But if you're counting on this system to do day-to-day tasks that you need, I would hold off for now, because macOS Big Sur and macOS Monterey are very well supported and have very few issues at all. Just as Big Sur and macOS Monterey have been, the patcher has improved and a lot of these things have been fixed. But again, it takes time to smooth these things out. So again, if you have a test Mac, like I said, it's running very well for me, but if it's on your main one, I would hold off for now. Now, I want to go over some important notes before you take the jump to install macOS Ventura. One of the things I want to start recommending is that you have a USB drive that includes your original operating system that's supported, that you came from. So let's say you had High Sierra on your Mac and you want to make that jump to macOS Ventura. I recommend having a High Sierra USB installer drive. So if something goes wrong, you can always use that to install. I can't tell you how many people I've seen on the Discord make that jump, have some problems, and then they have nothing to be able to create the USB installer with. Internet recovery is not working. You have this, you can easily get back to a supported system, and I'm going to start recommending that now. Again, just for safety. And the next thing I wanted to talk about was installing macOS Ventura as an upgrade. Now, you've seen me mention this before, but I need to mention it again because there's still people doing this. I know when you see macOS Ventura in software update, you think, hey, I should be able to upgrade over the air to the next version of the operating system. OpenCore Legacy Patcher supports updating the current version. So for example, macOS Monterey 12.6.1 to 12.6.2 or 3, but it does not support making the jump to macOS Ventura or newer operating systems because it needs to be installed via USB in the recovery environment. There's many people that have clicked this button and everything's fine, but there's also people that have clicked this button and had issues. That's why it's recommended to create that USB through the OpenCore Legacy Patcher application and install or upgrade through macOS Recovery once you boot it to the USB drive. The other thing I wanted to talk about is in macOS Ventura, when you have a macOS update and you see that it's 11 gigabytes in size, I used to tell you that all you needed to do is go into the post-install root patch and then revert the root patches, reboot, and you have the small delta update. The OpenCore Legacy Patcher developers do not recommend to do that anymore, especially with macOS Ventura. The full 11 gigabyte update needs to be installed to make sure that everything is reliable. Just like before with the upgrading through systems or software update, it works for some, but causes issues for others. Don't take that risk. Just go through and install that full 11 gigabyte update, and then you'll be okay after. Now the next question is it safe to install the latest version of macOS Update and the latest version of OpenCore Legacy Patcher? And this kind of goes back to the original part that I said in the video with the issue with the 0.6.0 update and why you might not see a video from me in the first day or two. In the background, I'm testing. As you can see, I've got multiple test devices here that I use to make sure that I didn't find any issues, and the developers are doing the same thing and the early beta testers are doing the same thing. The more hardware that can be tested, the better. And most of the time it goes off without a hitch, but sometimes there's a small issue, but usually it's fixed later. That's why I recommend waiting until you either see something from me or test it yourself on a test box before you test it on your main. Let's first start off with macOS Big Sur. macOS Big Sur is unique in the fact that it still has a lot of the drivers inside the operating system. This 2013 MacBook Pro metal compatible Mac still has all the drivers in macOS Big Sur, so you don't even need to install the root patches on it after. This is running macOS Big Sur 11.7.3, the latest version, and OpenCore Legacy Patcher 0.6.1. So when you go into post-install root patches, look at that, no patches are needed for this system. You can use the smaller Delta updates, which we mentioned earlier, and you don't have to download the full 11 gigabyte installer. But then again, you're 2 operating systems behind, but it's still a very solid system, and it is security update supported until macOS 14 comes out in November. That's macOS Big Sur 11.7.3 and 0.6.1. Now let's talk about 12.6.3. No issues here either. This test box is a 2011 15-inch MacBook Pro. It installed perfectly, and as you can see here with the post-install root patches, we are installed just today on 0.6.1 and no issues whatsoever. Now let's talk about MACOS Ventura. I've got a 2016 15-inch MacBook Pro running MACOS Ventura 13.2 and 0.6.1. No issues here, working very well. This is one of the systems that was having the issue on 0.6.0, but now is resolved and working properly with 0.6.1. And I've also got a non-metal Mac, which is our 2010 Mac Pro, which is everybody's been waiting for this, and it's running very well on 13.2 on 0.6.1 with full Wi-Fi and Bluetooth compatibility. It is absolutely fantastic to see this Mac Pro tower still cooking after 12 years of use here. So our first demo is going to be something that most people ask about. This is the number one question. Is it safe to install whatever the latest version of macOS update is and the latest version of OpenCore Legacy Patcher? And how do I do it? This is why I go over these live demos. This gives you a visual view of how to follow the steps to be able to see how they go. So this is a perfect example. This is a 2012 mid 15-inch MacBook Pro. It is running macOS Monterey 12.6.2, so it's got a software update available. So if you go into system preferences and you see software update, it'll check and say, hey, we got two things, but remember, we told you don't do this. You got to click this more info. Apple wants you to jump as fast as you can to Ventura, but you want to click more info, and that's where your macOS Monterey and Big Sur updates are going to be. So you're going to see these updates and you're like, well, wait a minute, what should I do first? Should I install them? Should I update OpenCore first? Well, my recommendation is before you install the update is to install the latest version of OpenCore first, just to make sure everything's okay. And then you can install the update. So what we can do is just open up our app. So we'll go into applications, and then we'll fire up our OpenCore Legacy Patcher application. And the first thing it's going to do is it's going to say, is there any updates available? And there it is. Look, we're running an older version on this system, 0.5.3. There's a latest version, 0.6.1. All we need to do is click on View on GitHub. And it'll bring us right to the open source page to be able to download the latest version. So now all we need to do is scroll down to the assets section here. Assets here, and the only one we need is the OpenCore Patcher GUI app.zip. So click on that and it'll immediately start to download. It's just about done downloading, and if you have a downloads folder down here, when it's finished downloading, you'll see it jump up and down saying that it's finished downloading, and there it is, and it unpacks and it unzips it, and you can see it right here in your downloads folder. If you don't have this down here, you can still open up your Finder and then click on downloads and you'll see it right here. So all you need to do is drag that right to your applications folder, whether it's from down here or in here, and you want to replace your current version. And if you have it still open, all you need to do is right click on the icon and hit quit, and then you'll be able to copy it over. So we'll go back down to downloads and we'll drag it right over applications and replace. Now we can go to applications and see our new version. Now this is only step one. Step one is to update the application. Step two will be to update the version of OpenCore on your EFI partition on your local hard drive. And then step three is to install the latest root volume patches for acceleration and other things. So we'll click on open here. And now we're on the latest application version of OpenCore Legacy Patcher. Now what we want to do is build and install OpenCore, the latest version, on our hard drive. But before we do that, I wanted to show you what it looks like when you get the pop-up box of the version of OpenCore if you boot up and it's showing the wrong version. This is the new 061 update message that you're going to get if you boot your system and OpenCore checks and sees that you are on a version of OpenCore on your local hard drive that is older than the current version available, and it'll let you update automatically by clicking OK. But remember, we've shown you how to do that manual. So if this for some reason doesn't come up and you wanted to check for manual, remember that NVRAM command that we used before. We can paste that in here and then hit enter, and I always put this in the description of the video, and it shows us the version of OpenCore we're running, and we're running a December 6th version 087. Now remember, 088 is out, and that's what we want to install now. So we'll go back to the application here, and what we want to do is, before we build this, we go into the settings and we set all the settings that we need to do. Remember, All these settings are default, don't touch them unless you know exactly what you're doing, because people have screwed it up by moving these settings around. The only really one you want to look at is the show boot picker one, and there's one for Mac Pros. If you want to go into the developer setting that we talked about before, there's a boot picker timeout. You can move this up to 10 to be able to see your boot picker if your monitor doesn't turn on in time. So we'll go back to return to settings, and for our MacBook Pro, we're going to turn this off, return to main, and then we can click build and install. It builds that to the temporary location, and now we want to take all those settings that were just set and install them to disk. It's going to say where you want to put them, our internal hard drive, and the EFI partition. We're going to type in our administrator password, and reboot, and restart. Alright, we're back up. Let's click the up arrow to bring our last terminal command back up to run that nvrem command again. And look at that. We've now updated our OpenCore on our local hard drive. The EFI now has been updated from OpenCore version 87 to version 88, and we're on the latest version from January 2nd, 2023. So that's step 2. Now step 3 is basically installing the latest version of the post volume patches version 061. So let's click on post install root patches, and you can see, hey, these patches are available for your system, and the last time you patched your system was on 053 on December 19, 2022. So we're definitely out of date. Click on start root patching and click on yes, we're going to restart the application as an administrator. Click on OK. And there it goes. Okay, it's rebuilding the kernel cache now, and there we go. Let's click on reboot and restart. Okay, we're back in, and we just finished installing the post-install root patches. We can go back in there to double check. We can click on post-install root patch. All the patches that are available for this Mac are installed, and it gives us a current version that we use and the date that are done. So we are good to go. We did A, install the app, B, update OpenCore on our internal hard drive, and C, we updated the root volume patches for acceleration and other pieces. So we're ready to go. We're fully up to date on this system. Now, if you wanted to install the update, now is the time to do it. You can click on update now to download the update, install, come back up, and then the final piece you'll have to do is install the patches again here, because every time you install a macOS update, it wipes them out. Now the next demo we're going to go over is a Ventura Mac that needs the kernel debug kit. I actually called it development kit before, but it's the debug kit. And this is actually what they look like when you download them directly from Apple. One of the things that the patcher does is it downloads them, installs them, and uses them to apply the patches. Now, where are those kept? If you go into the Macintosh hard drive or the Finder and you go into the library developer folder, you'll see the KDK. There it is. Inside here is the version of KDK that is installed. Now you can see on this Mac version 13.1 and 13.2 are in this system. If OpenCore Legacy Patcher checks this folder and they're not there, it needs to download them. And I'm going to force the patcher to do that now. So this system came back up after an update. You need to install the root patches so your graphics acceleration work for AMD and Intel Skylake. Do you want to install them now? We're not, and then we're going to do that manually. But I'm going to force it to download the KDK so you can see the install process. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to delete these. We're going to throw them in the trash. Again, this is for demo purposes only. If it finds that there's a compatible one in there, it does not need to download them. It uses the ones that's in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to click post install root patch. We need AMD and Skylake. Yes, we want to root. And let's reload the application with our administrator password. And then it says immediately it sees, hey, they're not there. It needs to download the development kit for 13.2 because we're on 13.2. And then it'll unpack and install that. Okay, it just finished downloading. And again, problem comes in because the update actually blows away certain pieces of the KDK. And that's why they need to be reinstalled every time after an update. So now you can see here the installing the downloaded kernel debug kit, and now it's installing that to this directory. And once that's installed, you'll be able to see it right in this folder. Move this out of the way so we can see. There's the kernel debug kit version 13.2. It's now using those files and it's merging and creating the snapshot and moving all the drivers into play. Now it's going to rebuild the kernel cache, and we're going to be able to reboot, and we'll have a fully patched Mac. All done, the snapshot's created, and all we need to do is reboot. Restart. All right, we are back up with our patches back installed. We can click on post root patch to verify, and there it is. All patches are already installed in the system. We've got our KDK and we are good to go. If you have any errors when you're trying to do the root patches, like you're getting dependency errors or something like that, I would recommend downloading the latest version of the KDK, installing it, then trying to install the root patches, and you can get them right from Macola's archive here of all the previous versions of the kernel debug kit. And then you can install it, and once it's installed, then some of those dependencies in that error could be resolved and you're good to go again. And that's OpenCore Legacy Patcher 0.6.1. Again, a huge thanks to Macola, all of the developers, all the non-metal team. You guys are absolutely amazing on all the work that you've put together into this patcher. It is loved by thousands upon thousands of people. And as you can see, I live, breathe, and eat OpenCore Legacy Patcher. So let me know in the comments if you have any questions here on any of the update or your Mac. Let me know if the information that I provided is useful to you. I know the video can be long, and if you're still here, you are a hero for sure. But again, I wanted to provide all the possible scenarios that you might want to go over. Am I missing something? Let me know. I want to hear from you. And again, remember, I'm coming out with a full walkthrough video on how to install Ventura on non-metal Macs coming up soon, so keep an eye out for that.